Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight, we walk where stone remembers every footstep ever taken. There was once a mountain that did not rise by force or fire, but by memory. It stood quiet among the peaks, older than rivers, older than seasons, older than the idea of time. The people who lived in the valley below did not fear it, nor revere it. They simply accepted that the mountain had always been there, and always would be, and so they passed through their lives without asking its name. But the mountain remembered theirs. It remembered the first hunter who climbed its slope searching for meaning. It remembered the grieving mother who came seeking silence deep enough to hold her tears. It remembered the child who once laughed at the summit, believing they could touch the sky. It remembered not through thought, but through presence, through stillness, through listening. The mountain was not stone alone. It was a witness, and a witness, when it has watched long enough, learns to care. At the foot of the mountain lived a wanderer who carried a quiet heaviness. Not sorrow, not fear, something older, like a question without words. The world was not unkind to him, yet he felt as though he was always just one breath away from remembering something he had forgotten. He did not know what it was. Only the mountain did. One evening, as dusk softened the valley into violet shadow, the wanderer felt a gentle pull, not on his body, but on his memory. A whisper, not spoken and not imagined. Come. He looked up. The mountain did not move, and yet it seemed to be waiting. The wanderer began to walk, not with purpose, but with surrender. Feet finding old paths his heart remembered though his mind did not. The forest at the mountain's base welcomed him with a hush. Leaves stirred not by wind, but by recognition. As he walked, the world grew quieter. No birds sang. No branches cracked. Even his footsteps faded. He felt as though he were being carried, not upward but inward. Then the trees opened to a clearing, and there, standing in the fading light, was a figure. Tall, steady, neither young nor old, the shape of someone who has been many things and forgotten none. Their eyes were deep with stillness, like the shadowed heart of a cave that has held silence for 1,000 years. The figure did not speak. The wanderer did not ask. They simply stood together, beneath a sky turning to night. The mountain had remembered his footstep, and now it would show him why he had come. The mountain did not speak in words. Its voice was the slow settling of dusk, the hush that followed the last bird's flight, the soundless pause that comes before a memory rises. The wanderer stood before the silent figure, neither afraid nor eager, only present. He felt as though he had known this figure once, or perhaps many times. The figure lifted a hand, not a command, not a summons, but an invitation, and the wanderer stepped forward. Together, they began to walk a path that wound upward, not steep, not harsh, but gentle, as though the mountain itself adjusted to the pace of the traveler who was meant to follow it. Every stone beneath their feet felt familiar. Every curve of the trail felt remembered. The wind did not blow cold or warm. It simply carried the past. The wanderer felt visions, not seen with eyes, but with the quiet space behind thought. Footsteps layered over his own, the footsteps of countless lives. A child laughing as they raced up the slope. A warrior placing a hand upon the rock before going to war. A poet who walked here searching for a word that had no sound. a shepherd laying down grief like a cloak as night rose to meet him. And he realized this was not a path to the mountain summit. This was a path into memory itself. The figure walked beside him, silent, yet the silence was not empty. It was understanding. After some time, though time meant nothing here, they reached a ledge that overlooked the valley below. The world stretched wide, bathed in early starlight, soft and endless. The figure finally spoke, but the words were not sound. They were presence. You have come here many times. The wanderer did not answer. He could not. The truth was too large to hold all at once. He felt it, though, like a forgotten melody returning note by note. This was not his first life, nor his second. The mountain had waited for him. Through ages, through worlds, through lives lived and lost. The figure turned toward him, eyes deep as the mountain's core. You have asked the same question in every life. The wanderer's breath slowed. What question? The figure placed a hand upon the stone at their feet. The mountain responded. A faint tremor, a memory shifting into place. The wanderer heard the question then, not spoken, but remembered. Where do the steps of a life lead when the walking is finished? He felt the weight of it, not heavy, but vast. The figure spoke again. You seek meaning, not in the journey, but in the one who walks. The wanderer looked down at his own hands, as though seeing them anew. The mountain had recorded every step he had ever taken, not to judge, not to measure, but to witness. To know yourself, the figure continued, you must remember who has walked before you. The wind shifted, the stars brightened, as though opening. The wanderer closed his eyes, and memories flooded. A hunter who loved fiercely, a scholar who feared loneliness, a sailor who searched for the edge of the world, a healer who carried every pain but their own, a child who dreamed of touching the sky. All him, all lives, all footprints upon the same mountain. He opened his eyes. The figure nodded, not in approval, but in recognition. You are not a single story, they said. You are the library of your own becoming. The wanderer exhaled, and the valley below seemed to exhale with him. But the memory was not complete. At the far edge of recollection, there was someone whose presence he felt, but could not yet see. A whisper stirred at the edge of the world. Keep walking. The figure gestured forward, and together they continued upward, toward the place where memory becomes truth. The path grew narrower as they climbed, yet no struggle met their steps. The mountain was not an obstacle. It was a guide, a witness, a memory that had chosen to reveal itself slowly, as one reveals a story to a child who is not yet ready for the ending. The wanderer walked beside the silent figure, and though no words passed between them, understanding flowed as easily as breath. Above them, the sky deepened into hues of violet and silver, where the first stars flickered like slowly opening eyes. The world below faded into mist, as though all that had ever been and all that would ever be existed only here, on the winding trail carved by lifetimes. You have climbed before, the figure said, not aloud, not as sound, but as presence. And each time you turned back before reaching the summit. The wanderer felt no shame, only recognition. It was not fear that had stopped him in other lives. Not hesitation, not doubt. It had been grief. a grief so ancient he no longer knew its name. They reached a plateau where an ancient pine tree grew, its trunk scarred, its needles silvered by ages of wind, its roots woven deeply into the bones of the mountain. Hanging from its branches were small carvings, figures of wood, stone, bone, each hand-shaped, each lovingly made. The wanderer reached for one, a small carving of a child laughing. His hand trembled. The memory rose, a child who once climbed this mountain with him, a child who ran ahead with fearless joy, a child who reached the summit alone and vanished into the sky. The wanderer fell to his knees. The figure knelt beside him, not to comfort, but simply to remain. Presence. Nothing more, nothing less. The mountain spoke, not in voice, but in the slow warmth of remembered love. No step is lost, no memory forgotten, no love gone. The wanderer's breath wavered. He had been searching for the child across lifetimes, searching in dreams, in starlight, in every quiet moment where the heart listens for footsteps it knows are gone. The figure placed a hand upon the ground. The mountain answered. The mist before them shifted and a shape emerged. Small footsteps imprinted themselves in the soil ahead. Light footsteps, joyful footsteps. The wanderer rose, tears that were not tears shimmering in the space behind his eyes. You have always been walking toward them, the figure said. Not away, never away. The wind stirred, the path continued, and with a heart that trembled, but did not break, the wanderer walked on. The path wound higher, and the air grew thin, but not with effort. The wanderer did not tire. The mountain did not demand struggle. It did not test or challenge. It revealed. Above them, the stars brightened, large as lanterns hanging low against the velvet sky. They seemed close enough to touch, as though the heavens themselves had stepped forward to witness what was unfolding. The wanderer followed the small footprints on the path, light, dancing, filled with joy. They led without hesitation, without fear. Each step glowed faintly, as though memory itself had weight, as though remembrance could light the darkness. The silent guide walked beside him. The mountain breathed around them, stone and wind and patience. The world below was gone. There was only ascent. And then the path opened. They stood before a great plateau carved into the mountainside, a place untouched by time. A stone altar stood in the center, not built, but formed by the mountain itself. Around it flowed wind like water, singing a low and ancient song. The wanderer stopped. The footprints stopped, too, just before the altar. Something waited there. Presence, not body, not form, not shadow. A memory of laughter. A memory of bright eyes. A memory of love that had never truly left. The wanderer exhaled, and the breath felt like it had been held for lifetimes. The presence spoke, without voice, without sound. You walked away because you believed you failed me. The wanderer closed his eyes. He remembered the day on the mountain, the ascent made long ago, in a life wrapped in sunlight. He remembered a child's laughter echoing through the pine trees. He remembered reaching out, and the sky taking the child in a radiant burst of light. There had been no scream, no fear, only joy. The child had not been lost. The child had returned home. But the wanderer had not understood. He had mourned. He had searched. He had walked lifetimes carrying absence. Now the presence spoke again. I was never gone. I was waiting. The wanderer's heart trembled, not with sorrow, but with release. The guide stepped forward and placed a hand upon the altar. The stone pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. The presence grew brighter, forming shape, not solid, not physical, but known. A child, smiling, the same smile that had followed him across dream and waking. The wanderer knelt. The child stepped closer, placing a small hand upon his. "You climbed again," the child said, eyes shining like the first stars ever born. "You remembered the path." The wind carried their voices, though neither spoke aloud. "You were never meant to hold grief," the child continued. "You were meant to hold love." The wanderer bowed his head, and the tears that were not tears fell into the earth, where the mountain drank them gratefully, as rain returning to the sea. The guide spoke softly now, the first sound since the journey began. "The mountain remembers every step, not so it can weigh them." He looked at the wanderer. "But so it can return them to you when you are ready." The child squeezed the wanderer's hand. "Come, there is still more to climb." The altar glowed. The wind rose. The stars leaned closer, listening. The wanderer stood, and together, child, guide, and traveler, they stepped toward the final ascent, where endings are beginnings, and memory becomes light. The mountain did not move. It had no need to. The world, in its restless wandering, always came back to it. And yet, something in the air had changed. The winds were slower tonight, not weary, but thoughtful. The cold that draped the stone ridges felt less like distance, and more like memory. The snow did not fall. It simply rested as though it too were listening. The traveler sat at the foot of the great slope, the lantern dim beside him. He had walked farther than any living soul had ever walked, and yet the mountain did not ask for his journey as proof. The mountain remembered him, not his face, not his name, but his footsteps. He felt it, as he had felt it since he was a child. The quiet pull, the silent invitation. Above him, the peak glowed faintly with the reflection of stars that had not yet risen. Not light from above, but light remembered. He closed his eyes. "I have come back," he whispered. It was not a declaration. It was not even a prayer. It was a returning. The mountain breathed, not with lungs, but with presence. A slow warmth unfurled along the stones, a warmth that remembered every life that had ever climbed, every question ever carried to its heights. And from deep within the silence, something answered. Not in words, in knowing. The traveler bowed his head. "I carry what I should have laid down long ago." The mountain did not reproach him. It simply waited. He thought of his village, the one where laughter had once lived. He thought of the river where he had played, the tree where he had carved his first memory, the windows lit at evening. All of it gone now, not destroyed, just past. Passed into time, into memory, into quiet. He had spent his life trying to hold it, keep it, preserve it, as if love required preservation to be real. But the mountain had always waited for him to learn. Love is not what is held. Love is what remains even when everything else is allowed to fall away. He felt his chest tremble. "It hurts to remember." And the mountain answered, "It hurts because you are still alive." A long breath escaped him. The kind that feels like surrender. The kind that feels like forgiveness. He reached into his cloak and drew out the small wooden carving. the one thing he had carried through every mile. It was a child's carving, uneven and soft at the edges. A little stag with antlers half-formed, a symbol of home, of the first thing he had ever cherished. He set it gently onto the stone. The wind passed over it, as gentle as a hand brushing hair from a sleeping brow. The mountain remembered the carving. It remembered the hands that had once been small, the laughter that had once been bright, the child who had not yet learned how to fear loss. The traveler felt the memory settle around him, not heavy, but warm. The mountain did not ask him to forget. The mountain asked him to rest. The ground beneath him shifted, as though something deep within the mountain had exhaled. And when he looked up, he saw that he was no longer alone. Footsteps, thousands of them, glowed faintly across the stone. Footsteps of those who had come before. Footsteps of those who had sought peace, not answers. Footsteps of those who had returned to themselves. He rose slowly. His lantern had gone out, yet the path ahead glowed, not with fire, with memory. The mountain had held every step ever taken, every grief ever carried, every love ever remembered, and now it held him too. He began to climb. The wind did not resist him. The cold did not bite. The path did not challenge him. It welcomed him, for the mountain had been waiting. It always had. And now, at last, he was ready to arrive. The mountain stood beneath a sky full of quiet stars. Night had come gently, not as a conqueror, but as a companion. The wind no longer howled across the stone. It breathed, soft and low, like someone finally resting after a long journey. The traveler, who had once climbed with trembling steps and burdened heart, now sat at the mountain's peak beside the ancient presence who had waited for him. The mountain was no longer only stone. It was memory. It was witness. It was the echo of every step taken by every soul who had ever searched for meaning in silence. The traveler looked out across the valleys and rivers far below. Places he had walked, places he had wept, places where he had spoken into the air hoping someone, anyone, might hear. And now he understood. He had never been unheard. Every footprint he had left across earth's dust had been gathered here. Every sigh, every quiet plea, every moment where he had not known whether he would endure the day. The mountain had known him even then. Why? He asked softly, not expecting an answer. But the mountain did speak, not aloud, not in thunder or voice, but in the language of presence. Because every step you took was sacred. The traveler closed his eyes. He remembered forest paths. He remembered rain on lonely nights. He remembered the weight of his own name, and how heavy it had once felt simply to be. And now that weight lifted. The mountain had carried it the whole time, not to take it away, but to show him that he had never needed to bear it alone. He breathed out, and the breath did not fall into emptiness. It was received, held, returned. He felt something settle in him that he had not known was missing, a quiet that did not numb, but healed. He spoke again, but this time his voice did not tremble. "What do I do now?" The mountain's presence warmed, like sunlight rising behind closed eyelids. "You go back." The traveler opened his eyes sharply, startled. Back? He had expected endings, completion, transcendence. But the mountain was patient. All who descend are afraid, But you do not go back as the one who arrived. The traveler looked at his hands. They were the same, but he was not. His heartbeat was steady. His breath was deep. His thoughts were whole. He was carrying the mountain now, not its weight, but its remembrance. The mountain spoke once more. Go where footsteps are forgotten. There are others who climb in silence. Sit with them. Listen. Do not guide, simply be present. You are not a teacher. You are a reminder that no journey is walked alone, that no step is unseen, that no heart is unheard. The traveler rose to his feet. The wind wrapped around him like a cloak. The stars opened a path downward across the sky. Before he began his descent, he placed his hand gently upon the stone. "Thank you," he whispered, and the mountain answered, "I will be here when you return." The traveler smiled, the kind of smile born only after one has remembered who they are. Then he descended the path, not to escape the world he had come from, but to walk back into it, as one who understood the sacred quiet beneath every step. And the mountain waited, as it always had, as it always would. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.